There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues, with capital the heart of their design? When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no, which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print and say that this thing has got to go, and we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, yeah, everyone will want a sign.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2025 and our first new episode of the year and our season. If you have been paying attention and keeping score at home, you know that last November we celebrated our 1 year on the air anniversary. So it's nice to be able to kind of time that along with the change of a year, which it means nothing, but it's the symbolism is good. So, and I almost got everything right today. And you can tell we've been on vacation because I spent. Oh wow. I'm sorry for the distraction. It's just like 1,000, literally like 1,000 starlings just descended on some outdoor cat food I have, and it was really horrible birds moment that just happened like right in front of me. They're all looking at me. I'm not even kidding right now. I face a window, and it's horrible. And this is like it's like the worst thing that like omen is happening right now. It's like the worst thing that could be happening. Anyways. Sorry about
Birds
that.
are going crazy by me too. We've been watching like
Right?
all around the block. They kind of just choose a different tree every few hours, and they all kind of scream, and then they go over to another tree, and they're
Yeah, it's well that I am completely snowed in right now. It is like, like 5 fucking feet of snow out here. Like I don't even know at this point. It is total snow in. They're all over the place, and they always do this in the winter where they just completely beseech the cat food. So that's where we are right now. I'm just trying to help out the outdoor BBs and then the birds come and assail everything and ruin my show. So yeah, speaking of which, thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us. We have a packed show for you. I always say that we're going to get to all these different oh, and now they all disappear. Weird. Anyways, we've got like 100 topics. We never get to everything anyways, so we'll get to what we get to. It's been a big few weeks since we've took a little pause here for the holidays, and but we're going to start off with this neat story that our oh, I forgot to introduce my lovely and illustrious co-host. So, I'm sorry, Mr. Jared, that the birds were distracting. So yeah, no, of course, with me as always is our lovely Mr. Mayor Jared, and he has for us today some stories of the road. As we know, he travels around as his career as a professional bard, and is going to delight us with a really cool project he's been working on, which in his travels, he recently was able to travel to China, which, as you know, if you've been watching the show, we talk about all the time. And he made a really interesting video presentation about it. And I will turn things over to him to let him talk about it a little more instead of me talking about it. So if you would, Mr. Jared.
So this is part of a much longer 3-hour travel vlog
Well, I was in China for 2 weeks, and you say recently, and it was still recently to me, but it was last year, so October 2023, so like a year and a couple months ago. And I took a journal and I wrote a bunch of notes down, and then I turned that into a script, and I read the script and I video edited in a bunch of. Well, it's also like an excuse for me to just show my freaking vacation photos. The section I'm gonna show here is when I went to the CPC museum. The Museum of the Chinese Party of Communist Party of China. I forget what the C's and P's even stand for, because it's slightly different if you do CCP versus CPC, and that's a whole like non-argument over which is the correct one. And the funny thing is, in that one, China officially doesn't care. There's actually been like a little article. It's like, people want to fight about this, we don't care at all. People in the West seem to get upset, so I'm trying not to friggin' perpetuate that. But here, listen to me talk, show you some things. If you think this is like a heavily political section, it's the most heavily political section. It's a lot of me just talking about food and showing you pictures of the food I'm eating. But in this case, it's the politics show. Let's show the politics. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Booking reservations through Alipay/WeChat can be a challenge if you can't read Chinese. Some pages will translate, others won't. Sometimes your information will work just fine. Other times that exact same passport, name, phone number combo just won't work at all, and you get thrown error messages that you can't read, and you just want to get into the Museum of the Communist Party of China, so you look very sad, and you walk up to the ticket lady and try to explain. So they bring over their supervisor, and they can't speak English either, so you're pantomiming, showing them your phone's error messages saying "Dui bu qi," and they're checking your passport and waving you through the metal detectors, and there's some problem, but nobody knows how to tell you, and you think they're telling you to put on a COVID mask, but then the supervisor says, "No chewing gum." Then you say, "Oh," and animatedly swallow your gum and open your mouth to the guy like you're in elementary school. And then you do get into the museum. Anyway, that's how I got into the Museum of the Communist Party of China. All right, I've retyped this section at least 5 times trying to figure out how to parse the politics of all this. And you know what? I'm not gonna. We're just going to talk about the museum, look at some exhibits, and move on with our lives. Nobody's going to defeat the Chinese Revolution in the comment section, and my opinion as a powerless internet music man doesn't actually matter. Outside the entrance are some amazing sculptures. Look at all these Chads. Even the kids are Chads. Look at this jacked architect. This place is gorgeous. It just opened in 2021 in time for the 100-year anniversary of the founding of the CPC. Remember 1921? From earlier in the video. And every surface sparkles. Marble stairs, velvet ropes, literal red carpet rolled out. Very impressive. The museum is laid out chronologically, starting before the formation of the party and ending with a look toward the future. You start on the bottom floor and work your way up through the years. Almost none of the signs are in English, but I was getting pretty good with Baidu Translate at this point, and all I needed to do was point my phone at the text. I was a little worried that photography wasn't allowed, but it was fine. I kept looking for the little picture of like the camera with the circle slash through it, but no, nothing. And then I'd kind of tentatively, like near staff, I had my phone. I'm just kind of looking at them. Okay, take a picture. The exhibitions on the lower floors really get across just how undeveloped China was 100 years ago. Like, just 100 years ago. I mean, think of America 100 years ago. Yeah, we didn't have quite the stuff we have now, but in 1925, we had something going on. We're industrially developing pretty rapidly. These people in China, they were living in stick huts without access to antibiotics in most cases. Like, it's not shocking that Mao's revolution took off among the peasantry. They were teaching people how to read, helping grow food, solving real problems, and that won over a ton of people. It won over enough people to build a coordinated resistance to the Japanese aggression in the 30s. Historical comparisons are always questionable since every area and group of people has a unique history and material conditions, but think about the American founding fathers and the revolution against the British. Nothing unites people like fighting off an oppressor, and the CPC and rival KMT worked together to force out Japan, which... good! That was pretty dope. To quote one of the museum's placards, this marked the first time in modern Chinese history that the Chinese people had won a complete victory against foreign aggressors in the War of National Liberation, and was an important part of our global war against fascism. Remember who Japan allied with? Yeah, it's weird, in the popular consciousness, everyone's like, Germany, Nazis, and it's like, boom, they're right, they almost not go hand in hand. Obviously, things are different now in Germany, but no one's like, Japan, fascism, like that. It's what was Japan should take the islands. After the Japanese were defeated, the KMT and CPC, they stopped stopped working together. Eventually, the KMT retreated to the island of Taiwan, where they remain the most powerful political party to this day. As you move upstairs, you start seeing artifacts of the early days of the People's Republic of China. We got Mao's suit, the microphones he used, the original flag, give me like Betsy Ross vibes, a transcription of the national anthem, all kinds of stuff. This tractor, man, tractor, tank, tankter, trank. China had a massive task ahead of it where they needed to rapidly industrialize, yet, since they recently underwent a communist revolution, Western countries weren't exactly chomping at the bit to establish normal relations with them. It's remarkable that it only took a century for this to become this.
The introduction of this intelligent seedling raising system has significantly reduced the breeding period for approximately 660 hectares of rice seedlings from 2 months to just 20 days. This has resulted in a 30% reduction in overall costs and has remarkably enhanced both efficiency and the quality of rice production.
There was a huge emphasis on economics in this museum, and effort is put to connect the economic development of China with the higher standard of living provided by that development. I live in the richest country in the world. I live in the richest country in the history of the world, actually, and over 200 years, I still don't have useful public transit. I still don't have, the ability to cheaply visit a doctor. I'm told this is the cost of freedom by museums here in the United States. While the Museum of the Communist Party of China is absolutely patriotic and is a celebration of the party and its accomplishments, the exhibits contain criticism of past mistakes. The museum signage refers to the disaster of the Cultural Revolution. They call it a disaster. Rather than paper over the bad times or pretend that they were actually good, the museum says the CPC can correct its mistakes. Mistakes. The ability to be critical and evaluate the effects of decisions and move forward based on facts and figures rather than pure vibes, is considered a strength of the party. And hey, that's kind of a refreshing viewpoint. As a citizen of a country that has done great good and great evil through its history, I can appreciate a dialectical viewpoint. The photos start being less in black and white and more in color. I'm starting to see some US presidents I recognize. Looks like it's Deng Xiaoping time! Okay. Everybody I talked to in China had some criticism for Xi Jinping and various other political leaders, but Deng seems to be almost universally beloved. The closest analog I can think of is how Americans feel about FDR. Deng Xiaoping oversaw the opening up of China's economy to the rest of the world. He worked with Richard Nixon, of all people, to relax US-China relations and started the process of establishing normal trade relations between our two countries. China started having access to American consumer goods and started making stuff for American companies. The Made in China era was gaining steam. And through these clever business deals, China's ability to manufacture stuff started going nuts. The Chinese economy friggin' exploded. Look at this chart. There's a saying that goes, under Mao, China stood up. Under Deng, China grew rich. Under Xi, China grew strong. And baby, to get rich is glorious. The clever part is Deng didn't just throw open the doors and say, all right, capitalist raiders, go frickin' nuts in here, do whatever you want. No, if you want to make cars in China, fine, good, but you must also teach us how to make cars. If you wanted to make computer chips in China, fine, good. But you must also teach us how to make computer chips. This is commonly perceived in the West as IP theft. Those darn sneaky Chinese tricked us into making our stuff over here, and now they know how to make our stuff. Don't they know that Henry Ford is the only person allowed to make cars? Ever? If China's making cars, they must have stolen the idea. Look, man, personally, I don't care. I want better, cheaper stuff. This fact that it's hey, everybody, you should all get electric cars. Also, all the cheapest and best electric cars are made in China, and we're going to charge a 100% tariff on them to make them more expensive than American electric cars, so fewer people buy electric cars. How am I supposed to take you seriously on this? I want a How Mao. Put up a picture of the cat car. It's freaking adorable. I don't know if I would fit in it, but it's cute. The rest of the museum marches through the years, and I won't bore you with every exhibit, but here are some highlights. Temple University doctorate for Deng Xiaoping, along with red, white, and blue cowboy hat. The cars that Chinese heads of state rode in for national parades. At some point, they just settled on this design and stopped messing with it. I don't hate it. The bluntness of the headings of the sections, ushering in a new era of socialism with Chinese characteristics, securing historic achievements, and effecting historic changes in the cause of the party and the country. That's one title. Animal heads. This video clip stuck with me. They show clips of guys locking arms, wading into rushing water, and pulling people out of a flood. Flooding is a big issue in China, or at least it has been historically. They're kind of getting it under control now. But like, what better way to win people over than to go help out with it? Communists putting their bodies on the line to help out their community. That's the whole point, right? And yeah, I get it. Propaganda. If you were getting flooded and your mayor or city councilman freaking pulled your truck out of the mud or whatever, like, you'd probably like them. In general, I hate to keep using this word, but I'm addicted now. I can't stop. The general vibe in the USA is that our institutions are not responsive to the needs of the people. Thus, the US Gov's approval rating hovers between like 20 and 40%, while at least 75% of Chinese people seem to approve of their government. It's a totally different way of thinking about your relationship to power. Like, as more than one of my new Chinese friends told me, when something goes wrong, the first instinct is to call the government, to ask, what is the government going to do about this? Like, why hasn't the government taken care of this? And in general, the response seems to satisfy the public, at least at a higher rate than in the US, according to the admittedly sloppy polling metrics available to me. Speaking of metrics, this is the end of the Commie Museum section, so bear with me for just a few more minutes. The party is very keen on mentioning the numbers, the stats. One of the last exhibits is this hall of plaques showing the change over time in things like literacy rate, disposable income, life expectancy, etc. It'd be awesome to see something like this in the US's propaganda, but yeah. There's a reason American politicians will talk about the overall growth of the economy all day, but rarely bring up our declining life expectancy, literacy rate, increasing hunger and homelessness. Finance capital witchcraft doesn't actually translate into elevated standard of living for anybody but the bankers and their accomplices. Alamabiz. The economy isn't actually good for most working Americans, and all that line go up finance capital witchcraft doesn't actually translate into an elevating standard of living for anyone but the bankers and their accomplices. We don't have to copy China. In fact, that would be a really bad idea, but like, if we don't shake off the rule of finance capital and start reindustrializing the United States, like, if Americans don't take control of the direction of production and start doing things that make sense and like make it financially possible to exist here without dying at the age of 60 from stress and high cholesterol, the United States will simply fade into the background as more and more scientific advancement comes from countries like China, and they're living to age 95, retiring at 55, and spending a few decades playing saxophone and dancing around in the park. Wouldn't you like to do that? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if I retired before the age of 85? I don't care about all this weird moralist nonsense or fighting about Winnie the Pooh or whatever. I want to see a doctor for a reasonable price. I want to work somewhere where my labor goes towards something that matters. And I want to know that if things get hard, I'm not likely to end up sleeping on the street. I don't care what ism you call it. I want to exit clown world where nothing ever changes and move towards reality. Very cool sculpture wall thing at the end. Look at this. I give this museum 4 hammers and 3 sickles, all power to the proletariat. Honey on pizza, and is that freaking mayonnaise? All right, that was a really long clip, but that is 10 minutes.
Very cool, very cool.
10 minutes of a 3-hour-long thing. I talk mostly about, like Joe's getting into, like, oh, let's go to the mall, look at the food, but that's the bulk of the video, but I figured that the little rant at the end, I think, needs build up to it, because I was kind of proud of that. I like.
Oh yeah, that was great, really entertaining. Where can people watch the rest of it?
You can see that on YouTube. You're going to type in American Coyote in China, and you'll probably get it as a result, depending on how it's like YouTube is. When I'm looking for the kind of stuff that YouTube shows me just on its own, it comes up like instantly. I can type in the title wrong. I can have misspellings. Blah, blah. When I'm looking for stuff made by other like rando socialists online, it is like, I try to look up Peter Coffin's stuff, a guy I like a lot, and if I don't type in his full name with exact correct, if I leave one of the F's off or something, it's just like, who do you mean? What do you, the Coffin Factory owned by Peter blah blah, and it's like, no. So hopefully mine does come up. American Coyote in China,
Very
a
cool.
vlog and travel guide.
Yeah, it's impossible to use. It's like Google at this point. It's impossible to keyword anything on YouTube at this point. So good luck, everybody. American Coyote and what was it again? American Coyote
in China.
China, yeah, of course, duh.
I slapped that
I just
link
want
in
to make sure that everybody gets the opportunity to see that wants to see it. So very, very cool.
That link is also in the chat. If you're seeing this in a replay that shows you the chat, you can probably go over to that and click the YouTube link, which maybe on YouTube will work. You think it would?
Yeah. Do you have plans to return anytime soon, or just when the wind takes you there?
I would very much love to. I'd love to go back and see different cities because, of course, I still am a thing I point out in the video. I'm still told that I haven't seen real China. I haven't seen the bad parts of it. So next I want to go to Chongqing, which favorite Chinese city name because it sounds like you're just making it up. Where are you going? Chongqing is the city that I would really. Actually, it's called Chongqing, city of 35 million people in the middle of China.
Yeah.
It's like every freaking tier 1 and 2, even tier 3. They have like tiers. They assign their cities. And there's like 5 tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And American cities are all what they would call like a tier 4 or 5 because like they have a couple train lines and a couple million people, and then you have the tiers 1 and 2, which are tens of millions of people. Your Beijing's, Shanghai's, etc. Shenzhen. But I want to see Chongqing, which is in the center of the country and it's all mountainy, and I want to see. Oh God, is it Xinjiang? The place where they say they're killing all the Muslims. Like I want to go and just be like, I don't know, man. And they'll be like, well, they just hid the concentration camps from here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's literally nothing I could do that would change somebody like that's mind.
Right.
It's like, no, I was there. I talked to all people. Well, they just must have like hauled out a bunch of actors to fool you.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's super cool, and you definitely should keep us posted on if you are able to return. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your travels.
Hopefully not a full year to get my next little video out, but also the next one will not be freaking 3 hours long. I did not intend for it to be that long, but as I was doing it,
that's the way it is. You're not making a major motion picture here. Like it's a chronicle of your existence and what you did. So that's really cool. I think it's really neat.
Instead of scrapbooks. So
yeah.
which weird thing do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, right. We were, it's not like we didn't have like weeks and weeks of shit happening to have to like try to cram into our first show back. I think that to touch on just the most breaking news of things is you probably heard that Trudeau resigned yesterday. A lot of Americans are really suspicious about stuff like that because they're like, oh, a scandal must be coming, and I'm like, there already were with the whole blackface and the youth incident and the robust the propping up of the robust Canada loves Nazis ideology. Like there's not much more where you can go from there. So, but there's that whole puritanical view that Americans take of that you have to stick things out till the bitter end until you vapor lock and die before you drop to the ground. So it's there doesn't necessarily have to be a reason. Look how they do it in the UK. They just quit when they get done. So they just want to stop. So that's really all there is. And I'm sure he'll enjoy a lovely career as a high-powered lobbyist and writing books about World War II. So I don't think that's as big of a deal as people are thinking, and they're like waiting for the big moment. But I don't think there's going to be a big moment. But that's just kind of to address some topical stuff as we kind of go through the idea.
It's been kind of interesting seeing Trudeau was kind of a universally disliked prime minister. His father was a prime minister like 20 years before him, so he's essentially like a George W. Bush situation where it's like, oh, this is his kid, now he's gonna. And also when it's talking about, oh, he's stepping down, but keep in mind that he was prime minister for about 10 years, so he was already prime minister longer than like a U.S. president or the same thing.
Right.
It's nearly a decade. I don't know if it's 8 or 9 years, but yeah, their elections happen whenever. They don't have a scheduled cycle of them. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's funny because he's been just as generally disliked for quite a long time. So it's like, well, why now? Like he's just like, I'm out. I've done it. I'm sick of dealing with this crap.
Right.
Because just like the UK, you'll get some more people. You remember how the UK had like a different prime minister every single year for a few years that are going on.
Right. They just kept quitting, and that's just, I guess, not the American way when you're thinking about like this we have to make ourselves suffer mentality. Through it, and because it kind of brings up the whole Nixon vibes, of like, oh, you quit, there's a reason for that. No, not necessarily. Just quit because he was done. Better job offer, that's basically all that it comes down to. And yeah, he was kind of a universally disliked character, but I'm sure that the America was doing the touchdown dance when they realized that they're now going to get to help install an either like a much worse authoritarian piece of shit that they can scrape up from wherever. Welcome, Prime Minister Zelensky. So something like this.
I'm scanning through the BBC talking about it, and hey, Britain is more, I don't want to say more connected to Canada than we are, but they have more like legal connections. They care a bit.
Canada is part of the British crown, like technically. So
They're
they've
talking
got the
about
queen
how
or the king now, I guess, on their money. Like they technically aren't a sovereign country exactly. It's kind of I don't know. It's kind of stupid. There's really no reason for them to be part of the British Crown, like, at all. But they're just like, I don't know. I guess they like it.
So if you don't like the representative democracy form that we have here in the U.S., where it feels like you don't get to choose the candidate, you just get to choose kind of the party. In both British and Canadian elections, like, that's how it works. Trudeau stepping down does not mean that then, oh, cool, we have another general election and pick a whole new thing. No, the Liberal Party, which is the name of Trudeau's party, equivalent of our Democrats, they just pick a new one. There's no vote. They just go, okay, Trudeau's out. We're gonna put them like what happened with, was it Keir Starmer or someone else in the UK?
Yeah.
Maybe Starmer's the current one. I legitimately lost track because they changed 3 times in 3 years. But apparently he's been seen as a drag on the party, like he's bad for the brand, basically. And I guess I could buy that. I'm sure they would have loved to just swap out Biden if they had that ability here in the U.S. because it would have been a lot simpler. Actually, like, as crappy as many issues as there are with U.S. democracy, I do like that if it's in the situation where we don't like our candidate, but we're still the party in power, we're just going to swap her out for this lady, that they aren't actually allowed to do that, and it caused a bit of controversy when they just traded her out for Kamala. Because if this was Canada, they would just be like, oh, yes, this is a normal thing to do. We will simply swap out a candidate for someone no one voted for.
Yeah,
and like,
exactly.
oh, yes, wonderful democracy here in Canada.
It's a weird system. It's like everywhere you go, it's like, this doesn't make sense. But well, it remains to be seen what's going to happen next. I'm sure it won't be great. It already wasn't. So, but like I said, I'm sure America and the NATO allies are loving this right now. So that's just a little bit of a topical situation since it happened yesterday. I wouldn't get your hopes up too big about any kind of a scandalo developing around that. It's just they just kind of.
He went into office with, like, Obama. He was prime minister when Obama was.
Yeah, they were like best friends. It was like, and back then when you had the Democrat derangement, and you were like, oh my God, it's so cool.
We had sexy
they're bros.
leaders.
Oh, it's so sexy. It was so stupid. I hate thinking back to, like, every now and again I'll get like reminded of old, like, the memories on Facebook, or I'll see in my blog like old posts, and I'm like, oh, this is bad. This has to go. Delete. Because we wouldn't be here if we didn't start off as shit lips. We own it. We were. We're not anymore. But
I do want to mention very briefly the thing that I would most remember Trudeau for, because the blackface thing is one thing. It's very funny. Well, it's not funny to fucking do, but it's funny that that's the kind of scandal that's him, because it's like, holy shit, this guy gets to run Canada, and it's the picture of him dressed as, quote, Aladdin, I think, and it's just full fucking brown face.
Yeah, looking like he's wearing shoe polish on his face. Like, ugh.
It looks like a bad SNL sketch. It's like, no, that's just him at a party. It's like, oh my God.
Right.
But this is the kind of stuff that I would be more mad at him for. Personally, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has apologized on behalf of Canada's Parliament after a Ukrainian man who fought for a Nazi unit. No, he's a Nazi. He just worked for this fucking,
like a Nazi contractor with the Nazis, but not like we can't say it all the way.
He was a freaking Waffen SS officer. He wasn't like tangentially connected to the Nazis. He proudly served and wore the uniform and fucking shot at or shot people. I don't know. Hunka, the freaking guy's name. He was unwittingly applauded in Parliament. This was a mistake that deeply embarrassed Parliament and Canada, Mr. Trudeau said. What is it? Speaker wrote it. Yeah, Yaroslav Hunka, who is a 98-year-old guy, and they wanted to pull him in because it's like, hooray, Ukraine. And in trying to go hooray, Ukraine, they were incapable, apparently, of finding an old dude veteran that they could feel good about who was not a literal SS officer. Officer, member, whatever. I don't know the right words.
Yeah. And are you a time traveler too? In the chat mentions that American women were so delusioned by him because he was so handsome. So that must have meant he was wonderful, and that was true. American women were all up about it. But whatever. Go do your shit and whatever. It really doesn't have that big of an impact. The next guy is going to be whatever the next problem, and we'll address that when that happens. But
his dad was not hot either. What the hell?
One of the other big things that have been going on pretty much across the entire board of is that Papa Trudeau?
Yeah, like, because even here when he's young, he has a very like, wow, that certainly is a look. That hair.
Maybe we're missing like the historical context. Like you had to be there. You'd be like, oh damn.
No, guys, in 1972, this guy was hot.
I love it. Yeah, so this is there's another conversation that's been going on for a few weeks, actually, pretty much mostly over the Christmas holiday break. And I think a lot of it has been spearheaded by Ken Klippenstein, which is a lot of attention is right now being drawn again back to the term limit, congressional political term limit argument, because there was a newspaper in Texas, I think it was, that started to uncover this, found out that a sitting congresswoman was in a nursing home for Alzheimer's presently right now. and then he kind of picked up that story and ran with it, and then uncovered other ones that are, and pointing out, just a couple of days ago or yesterday, maybe at the latest, Nancy Pelosi was using a walker on the House floor, and another congresswoman took a header down a bunch of marble stairs, and her like, marble is slippery. I mean, apparently there was a lot of blood involved. Jerry Connolly is riddled with cancer and 1,000,000 years old. Chuck Grassley is 91 years old and was just, sworn into another high position of power. And so it's definitely renewed the debate about where these people are and what's going on. And we remember back just a couple of years ago when, they were wheeling Dianne Feinstein around, and who was actual Methuselah. And
did she die yet, or is she still
she
going?
did die. She
Okay.
finally just like
I can't remember.
literally keeled over. She was like that thing on SpongeBob with the old woman who wheels her mom around, and it's just this kind of worm thing in a wheelchair. Like that's, yeah. And then they show
hold the walker but can't touch the ground.
Yeah, right. And then they show these clips of these, people who are literally being like spoon-fed what to say by their aides. Like,
she's
on
saying the wrong
spot.
thing, and the aide has to run over. Like, this was like last week. They had a clip, some old congressperson,
Yes.
which doesn't make fun of old people, but if you can't do the freaking job, why are you there?
Right.
Yeah, they have to run over. She like almost falls down. They have to like get her and like, you're voting no. You're saying this. She's like, okay, I'm.
Right, exactly. And it really is absurd. And again, this is not an ableist debate. There really isn't a debate here to be had. If you cannot do the job, you cannot do the job, no matter what. And we have all seen the reports for years of people talking anonymously to pharmacists in Washington, D.C. who say, we are 100% filling Alzheimer medication prescriptions for members of Congress. So it is a problem on its own. It's an obvious on its own problem. Like, hey, these people cannot do this job. They need to get the fuck out. And even if they can, like, I don't want a 91-year-old anybody telling me anything. I'm sorry, I don't. It's just at this point, and I don't think anybody should have to deal with that. Like, this just really is obviously another cog in the wheel of corruption, where these people are lifetime. I started to say criminals, which is true, but lifetime, workers with the lobbies and the corporations who have done their bidding since the 60s and the 70s, and hell, even maybe longer if you're 91. So, and then, there have been reports here recently about that Biden's immediate team was hiding him from people and keeping him from interfacing with people because his dementia situation is as bad as it is. And then they juice him up with Adderall and send him out when it's time to do something. And they're saying he said that he shouldn't have conceded to Kamala and should have gone for it because he would have won. And it's like, did he say anything? Could he even form that sentence? Is that like a thing? Like, are we really supposed to believe that at this point? And that, like, they're just looking for anybody else to blame or whatever. But we also know that Nancy Pelosi has said that she's running for re-election. Again, Chuck Grassley was just sworn into a new position. And this is out of hand. There's just completely out of hand situation because, we know that the American government is super corrupt. And does the bidding specifically of these corporations. And we don't have a democracy. That's what we have. We have something that is in direct contrast to what Jared presented to us at the top of the hour about China. This is a system that feeds the top, 1%, the upper echelon of society, and absolutely shits on the lower, 99% of people. And that's why we as citizens and as people, citizens and non-citizens, just collectively, I'm not excluding like immigrants here. I'm just saying, we are not living the quality of lives that we should be living. And in comparison to how they live in China, which they make it look so easy. That's why we're always on about it, because we're jealous and we're mad that we have to live under these conditions, that we pay, insane amount of taxes. The jobs are disappearing to AI. We don't have public transit. We don't even have medical care. There's a new super virus with bird flu, which I don't know if we'll get problems for saying that, but that's on the horizon. That wasn't even a part of the equation. There were no preparations made for that. So that's coming, and that's got like a 50% mortality rate. So who even know, the people that are talking about it, which are, medical people are saying, or, epidemiologists are saying, like, you think COVID was bad, wait for this one, and I believe it, I at this point, just because I know how badly it was handled with this last one, this last situation. And that's not to say that younger people would be any less corrupt. What this is to say is that these people specifically do not represent the interests of the American citizens or where this country wants to go, even across the spectrum, because they can't function. That's where we basically are. We're at it's a non-pass situation. So eventually, when they do die and they have to be replaced by someone, of course they're gonna, be shaking the same hands and doing the same back slapping and make the same back, room deals. But it's like this is an obvious problem that really needs handled. Except that, we also run into the issue of these people who run unopposed. Or anytime anybody has tried to oppose Nancy Pelosi, for instance, and even gotten, some good traction, magically she comes out on top. Nobody's fucking voting for Nancy Pelosi for anything. She is universally hated. So I don't know where, this outside of election rigging, I don't really know how these people keep maintaining their districts, apparently doing the work for, their area when they're doing nothing but, trading stocks and enriching themselves. Jared, your thoughts?
the fact that we have such an aging leadership population, whatever you want to call it, like people sitting in Washington, I think lends evidence to my repeated claim that this is not the top layer of power. These are people who auditioned for their mascot jobs, because someone does have to sit in the seat and do the actual operation of voting. So you can say, look at our phony baloney democracy. Like, we did have a vote over it, and then you voted for them, so therefore representative democracy, right? Once you have somebody who is a good puppet, and there's a couple facets to the job. Like, you need to be able to get up and you need to be able to lie without giving the game away. You got to be able to sit on CNN every once in a while and make some excuses. And you need to be able to fundraise, and you need to be able to just listen unquestioningly to the orders that come your way. And if you've proven yourself an effective puppet, I mean, look at Nancy, look at basically anyone in Congress. I mean, freaking Feinstein's a great example. If you go back in these people's histories, they were at one point freaking firebrands. You have Nancy Pelosi was considered a radical back in the day, but you get in, you're no, look, masters, I have proven that I will serve you, Satan. I will do anything that you want, and you get to stick around forever. And once you get to a certain age, it makes the job even easier, because they don't even have to attempt to try and box you in with any kind of. No, you become an old lady who has a staffer repeating loudly the script at her, so you can, you get to just get up there, read cue cards, and collect your check. The president is that. Why is Joe Biden who is a more perfect puppet of the people who actually run this country, of the interests that actually run this country, because it's not even really individual people, it's boards of directors at this point and shareholders. Right. Who is better than an old dude who can't form an argument if he tries? You just walk him from room to room. He waves,
and we talk about how Reagan is literally, like actual Satan, and is responsible for literally everything horrible in the conditions that we live under now, and everything horrible that's happened in the last 40 years. He quite literally had Alzheimer's in office. And, this is not some sort of new phenomena. I don't know what it was like in, the 18 fucking fucks or whatever, they're wheeling people around, if it was the same situation, as because those people just didn't want to give up their positions of power. But we know that the system of corruption stems from, I'm sorry, it's a complete siege back here right now.
More birds.
They're bouncing off the door. It's seriously 100 fucking birds.
You even see what happens when people try to get swapped out. I mean, freaking Jamal Bowman, who is
Yeah.
very far from being somebody who was going to go in and destroy the Democrat Party.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
he already
yeah.
he fights against progressives more often than not. Well, his seat is gone because he had the gall to not fully endorse the genocide in Gaza, and he still
Right.
didn't even really go out against it that much. He was just like, "Hey guys, maybe," and that was it. That's
Yeah.
all it took. He's out. If that doesn't work, they'll fucking Dan Quaid your ass and just remove your district entirely. Like, if you try to operate within this system, you're just frickin' fooling yourself, or you have to know that you are auditioning for this mascot role, and if you are a good mascot and can just completely sell your soul and be an empty husk for the television so we can be like, look, the democracy, people are voting. If you're cool with that, yes, you might get into office.
Right.
If you could swap all of Congress today, they would just find, 100? Yeah, 50 times 2. They would just find 100 new people. That's the Senate, sorry. 100 new senators and 300 or whatever new Congress people who coincidentally vote the exact same way as the current set of people you have. It would just be a little effort for them, so I guess it's easier to just keep in the same person until they're 95 years old. Or heck, maybe they will throw term limits at us as a, look how good your democracy is now. Yeah. We changed, and then nothing actually changes except it's a new set of faces doing this exact same thing.
It's the AOC syndrome, like she came on.
She's the new Nancy.
Right. She exactly that. Like, she came on the scene and kind of tricked everyone into believing she was a bartender.
Bring the ruckus.
Yeah, all that.
I totally didn't work for the CIA ever.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly right. Like, she wanted everybody to believe, like, she promoted this idea, and these people around her who selected her promoted her as this idea of, oh, she's just a bartender. She's just like you. She's literally pounding the pavement to go door to door to talk to people. She is literally one of you. No, she wasn't. She was a co-owner of that bar and a CIA spook before she even got to that point. So she always was meant to roust, the base a little bit, but always going to be a Democratic operative no matter what, because it really doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. You are serving the same amount of people and the same corporations, and there's only so many of those, so those are the ones in control. The major industries, the logging industry, the oil industry, the tech industry, those are the ones calling the shots. Speaking of which, yesterday was a big news day. Yesterday also, Macron of France, President Macron, said that Elon Musk is, or Shmilon, I like to call him, because I don't want to get our shit flagged. I've said a lot of buzzwords today by accident. But said, called him out for saying that he's directly meddling in international elections, including Germany's election, which I guess we've got one coming up. Don't doubt it. He's all the way meddling in this one right now, all the way through it. And I kind of almost want to take some bets about how long is Trump going to put up with being kind of considered the whole beta of this situation, until he's like, no, focus back on me. Because they're really, really jockeying for who's in charge right now. And I just don't see Trump taking that. It's an ego battle at this point. So I don't see him taking that for very much longer. But that's also what's going on at present. I don't doubt for a second that he's trying to meddle in other elections. He meddled all the way through this one. And
whenever it's a billionaire, it almost sounds like the teachers are meddling in the class election. It's like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, right.
They're the ones who actually get to vote in these elections. They when Elon has opinions, someone actually listens to it. Of course, he's meddling in elections.
Right, exactly.
And just everyone else around the world is like, oh, isn't it fun? Now, wow, they're talking. Suddenly, people care that America's messing with someone else's election.
Yeah, and he's mostly, the thing of it is it's kind of a joke because he's become the face of it. But it's, there's all these faceless people who, with all this dark money and all these horrible things. I hate that term because it's just so overused. Anytime you don't want to say where money came from, it's dark money. No, it's out in the open money. They're literally doing it right out in the open.
You don't need conspiracy theories or UFOs or anything. It's all just on the books. Yeah,
right. It is, and it's it's just right out in the open. And if we didn't have things like PACs and super PACs, and if there were more reasonable donation limits and how things could be donated, because there's always lobbying groups that find ways around this. It's like, oh, well, we can't give you $10,000 million. How about a $10,000 million yacht? Or like a vacation, or and then that's what Clarence Thomas got in trouble for. He was just getting patted right and left with all these vacations and items and luxury stays at places, and because all these billionaires were just treating him to things, and he's like, those are just my friends, guys, we're just hanging out like friends do. And but he still has his job. It didn't make any difference whatsoever, because he was, it was decided by these people who, decide where the funding goes and decide what they want, that they were going to allow him to, bypass that issue. So yeah, it got raised in the media a little bit, but nothing came of it. And he's still holding on to a lifetime appointment in a job that nobody voted for him for. So,
and if the Democrats actually wanted to do
and he's
anything
old as
about
fuck
that,
too. So yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If the quote good guys wanted to do anything about that, oh, it's too hard to oust him. Great, stack the court, put 15 of your favorite judges in there, and rule the court forever.
Exactly.
But then the Republican, great. I love that always the solution is to do nothing and just see what happens. It's awesome.
Yes.
Like, thank you so much for all of your help. So we're just to make sure that I have enough time to freaking do the thing.
Yep.
I have a video clip just talking about weird things that are going on, and that as you listen to this, please don't think I'm showing this video because I think that everything this guy says is like gospel and truth. We are in evolving. The thing you need to remember from any of these attack situations, we're about to talk about the Cybertruck blowing up in front of the Trump building, but with any of these, when we are this close to the thing, heck, we could be 5 years away from the thing. Information, doubt it. Like, there's anytime you hear about a shooting, oh, there's a second shooter and there's bombs, and then all that stuff almost always ends up not being the case. The Cybertruck Trump thing and the what was it, the New Orleans truck attack and the New York City shooting that all happened within 48 hours of the strike of midnight on New Year. There's just weird shit about all of them, and this guy in this video clip does. I say this guy. I'm too if I was smarter at knowing who the internet video people are. This guy has almost 1 million Twitter followers. I don't even remember his freaking name, but he does a good job.
I'm sure he won't mind.
He sticks it all on a TikTok, and the only reason this came across my feed to begin with is a commie I was making the point of how since freaking. This is a situation that progressives and lefties should be all over as look at this weird shit that the state may or may not be doing, but instead it is left to, quote, normies like this guy to try and put the thing together. And when they say normie, they just mean someone with a less sophisticated analysis. These are just people who just live in the world, take in the information without any extra pursuits or study, and just go, wow, things sure are weird. They're arriving at the same conclusions that you would if you were freaking hardcore studying Marxism, because it's just the contradictions are too apparent. And all right, here we go.
So the Tesla Cybertruck car bombing in Las Vegas has turned into the craziest reverse Psyops story ever. And it's still developing, but I'm going to run through all of the evidence in all directions that I have found so far, so hopefully it's easy to kind of pick up where we're at right now and see what comes next. First thing, super iconic, not an accident. But the question is, not an accident, why? And who's actually behind it? Because the media is pinning everything on Matthew Allen Livelsberger because they found his passport and his ID and a bunch of stuff of his in the car. Though the car blew up, passports always survive.
Remember, they found the fucking 9/11 hijackers' passports. And it's yeah, sure.
I've never heard this one before.
Definite. Why is there always somebody's... It's like the Dave Chappelle joke, I better sprinkle some crack on them. But what?
Right?
How can... their passports always conveniently right next to them, right next to the gun, right next to the board of their fingerprints, right...
And he's an active duty Green Beret that's been stationed mostly out of Germany and Colorado. And the Green Beret community is digging into this deep and getting sources, and there's so much that's not adding up. And then yesterday, I think it was, the plot super duper thickened when the Sean Ryan show had this whole expose on this whistleblower scenario where he had Sam Shoemate on, who had apparently gotten an email from this Green Beret dude the day before the bombing. And the email is crazy spicy, but it's a little suspicious. If you haven't seen the Sean Ryan Show podcast episode yet, you should watch at least the first 30 to 45 minutes. Put it on 2x speed. You should not believe everything that is said at face value. Remember, both these guys are military intelligence assets, former and current. This is the alleged email that Mr. Shoemate received, but notice that there are spell check red squigglies in here. And there's a cursor, and we've learned this before. This is not how an email appears when it is received in your inbox. This is how an email appears when you're typing it. But this is what the Sean Ryan Show put out as the email that was received.
Like, maybe there's a really reasonable, easy explanation for that, but come on. It just seems really weird.
Received, allegedly. And it alleges that the drones over the East Coast are Chinese tech and that they could bomb the White House at any minute. And it's like this whole, basically it alleges that World War III is about to happen between the US and China, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. And he's like trying to be a whistleblower to like stop it. But if this email is real, it's like the perfect food for the military-industrial complex and for World War III warmongering. But it gets weirder. So the Las Vegas officials and the FBI, who are totally trustworthy, have been assessing the scene. Hey, Gigi, don't do that. Stay over there. That's where they found the passport. They also found an incinerated desert eagle, which apparently he used to shoot himself in the head before the explosion. It was dropped on the floor right in between his feet in the driver's seat. And if you know anything about how powerful these guns are, you imagine shooting yourself in the head with it and then it dropping straight down instead of like just flying into the Not to mention that no one has reported any report from a gunshot in the car at the scene at the time, and that is like the most powerful handgun you can buy. A whole conspiracy on this thread is Teslas can drive themselves, and I don't know if anyone's ever tested the self-driving because it'll watch you, and if you don't look upwards, it'll tell you to look or it'll stop the self-driving, so you can't just look down at your phone or close your eyes and go to sleep. But has anyone ever tried it with a dead body that has its eyes open? Because that is probably possible. It's unclear. Because allegedly the remains of the person found in the front seat, though charred, burnt beyond recognition, the DNA did not match the DNA of this guy's recent child. Apparently his wife just broke up with him and they were trying to paint that as like he's angry. It's like Green Berets get divorces all the time. Like maybe the kid wasn't his kid. I think it's more likely that the body wasn't his body. Because again, in the email that was allegedly sent by him, theoretically, it's very clear that he's not planning to kill himself. He's planning to escape to Mexico and to do this whole thing in order to bring attention to this and to whistleblow and to be taken seriously and to get this out to as much news and publicity as possible and then escape to Mexico. He says it 2 different times in this email. The trunk was loaded up with all these crazy fireworks and there was some gas cans in the cab that caused the explosion to sort of... It's a little unclear, but it seems like the explosion was intended to not cause a bunch of death, but just to cause a scene. Like he chose a Cybertruck, which is bulletproof, like the worst car to build a car bomb in. And then he filled it with fireworks instead of like he's a Green Beret. He could have built a real high like power IED that could have blown the building up, theoretically. And then he says in the letter that he's trying to keep a low profile because he's being followed and they attempted to abduct him, but also that he's trying to keep a high profile because they know he has this IED, this car bomb rigged up. And so he got a Cybertruck, which is like, why would you get a Cybertruck? The police have had no trouble tracking the Cybertruck both in Las Vegas on CCTV footage and on its supercharger route across the country. The police said that they have tracked the purchase of the firearm, specifically the Desert Eagle, back in Colorado. There's a 3-day wait on purchasing a firearm in Colorado, so we had to have initiated the purchase 3 days before leaving Colorado to come to Las Vegas for this event. But then in the email, he gives like as confirmation that he is who he says he is. First off, I'm not under duress or hostile influence or control. My first car was a 2006 black Ford Mustang V6 for verification. Well, people verified. People pulled his vehicle records, and actually he has never owned a 1996, was it? Ford Mustang, or a 2006 Ford Mustang, but his first car was a Ford Mustang, just totally different year. So it's not really like, could be that because it's 30 years ago, like it's his own car 20 years ago and he just forgot the year. It could be like, why would you put the wrong verification in? Like you'd think if it was someone else faking the letter, they would get the right verification because they wanted it to get verified. You think if it was him, like maybe he misremembered it. Maybe it's an intentional misverification. People are like, oh, maybe it was in his parents' name because everyone's first cars are in their parents' name. Well, people pulled his parents' car records too. Check out Landry22 if you want to see those on X. But then the Las Vegas police, the officials, released like manifestos that they found on his phone, which was like charred to oblivion. But they found these manifestos.
how the God his phone worked after all this. Passport's fine.
Yeah,
After that explosion,
right.
and his phone apparently still you could get stuff off of it. And
Convenient.
to remind people of the disclaimer before this, we could even just by now. I think this video was made like 2-3 days ago, but even by now, people could have come up with or not come up with. I don't want to sound like it's a counter conspiracy, but there might be perfectly reasonable explanations for those things. Maybe it really was just a misremembering the car date. Maybe he really did send that email. Maybe that guy fully believed everything in that email, and then something happened. Like in any one of these individual little things could end up with a reasonable explanation. I'd be more surprised if some of them didn't, like the whole like the car the which his first car situation thing, like that could genuinely just be put the wrong freaking year. I forget what year my both car and like I'll tell people the year my house was built, and I always end up saying the wrong one. Just it doesn't mean I don't actually live in my house or own my cars. But he's going to get to the point here in a second. The whole this email is the perfect thing that you would want if you really wanted a war with China. The fact that all of this points towards we need to go do a war with China, that is the core of the suspicion here. Because like, just like with the New Orleans guy, who we're not even going to get into today because we don't have time, the New Orleans guy, the day after that truck ran into that crowd of people, they were in his apartment talking about how many ISIS flags and Korans he has. It's like, oh, okay, so he's the Middle East war one. Like, he's the one to try to get
they show a suspicious, definitely not AI generated photograph of a guy, and then they have CNN tromping through a crime scene, an active crime
like
scene
the
again.
next day. Like, were we in Luigi's house the next day?
Yeah,
were
right,
we in the
exactly.
Vegas shooter's
This
house the
letter,
next day?
That's the first thing I thought of. This is exactly like the Luigi letter that didn't make any goddamn sense, and they said it's this manifesto, and it didn't have any actual political anything in it, and it thanked the fucking cops. Like, what the shit is this? Like, you people are so egotistical, you can't even keep yourselves out of it.
I don't know what of these are fake, what of these are real, but the fact that they all point towards these convenient narratives that only benefit the military-industrial complex, the increased like surveillance state, etc., etc.
Yes.
It sure makes me really, really suspicious. And I have enough knowledge base because I've been reading these fucking books that I understand the connection as to why someone might want these results. I don't know how much. Oh, his name's Ian Carroll, by the way. I feel like I should know him from something. I don't know if he made like goofy YouTube videos back in the day, but I feel like I know his face. He's he's a politics guy now. He talks almost entirely about politics, but like, I don't know how much Marx this guy has read. Probably zero, but even he's sitting there going like, well, you see how this makes money for these very specific shady industries that seem to run the whole government. And yeah, he's correct. The contradictions are so in your face now. Everybody fucking notices, and we have for a really long time. It's just now we can all talk to each other about it. I'll let the last couple minutes of this go because he has some summarizing thoughts.
That, like, this one is basically like, yo, all military personnel, go and take the Capitol right now. It's, like, really unhinged and retarded. And the other one, like, it's just, like, screenshot and read if you want. Like, the other one is just so weird. Then they released, like, video from his Tesla Cybertruck at the supercharge station that they said was in Las Vegas, but the internet has sleuthed around and pretty much confirmed that actually that was not in Las Vegas, it was in Arizona, because there's a Carl's Jr. Next to the supercharge station. They were looking for photos where there's a supercharge station and a Carl's Jr., and it's in Kingman, Arizona, which is that stop right there before getting to Las Vegas. Plus the Green Beret chatter on YouTube and X, and everyone in the Green Beret and like Special Forces communities that are commenting on this, saying it does not line up at all. Like, he did not have the expertise to understand this kind of stuff about drones. He did not have the clearance. He wasn't even like stationed in the places where they said he was stationed. It's all very sus. Not to mention that he was like a TV star with Tim Kennedy like 10 years ago on some like Special Forces like game show, TV show. Whole other funny rabbit hole. But a bunch of guys know this guy. Like, a bunch of people on the internet right now have done operations and missions with him, or trained with him, or been stationed with him. So there's a lot floating around. And I don't have any answers. I don't know what's going on. But one thing that we can all agree on is that if the evidence starts pointing towards a war with China, or a war with Iran, or a war with Russia, it's probably the deep state setting you up for that war. And if I had to guess right now, here's what I would guess was going on. The military-industrial complex is learning as we go, and they are wise to the way this world works. And seeing how X has debunked all their other bullshit this last year, I'd bet right now it looks like they decided, what if we need to start our psyops using the decentralized media space as our patsy, as our pipeline of information to deliver the information so that the internet thinks it's real. So the internet thinks it's coming from inside the house, right? And so they concoct a situation in which a known and trusted and verified internet sleuth, this dude on Instagram, who is like a military whistleblower, like hub. He's like the dude for military whistleblowers to go to. It makes sense that this guy would go to him. And so they concoct this email that goes out to him. And they concoct this scenario whereby it looks like either they got this guy and he's on the payroll, like this Green Beret guy is like in the op, or they captured him and are using him as a patsy, as the fall guy for the op. And it looks like they're feeding the information out into sort of vetted social media decentralized channels so that we are the ones producing the PSYOP ourselves. And it's just the source information that is actually manipulated. That is what it looks like right now. And keep your eyes peeled, stay frosty, don't believe a single fucking thing you see. And if any of it points to war with Iran or China or Russia, even if it seems credible, it's fucking not. Doesn't matter. We're not going to war.
Going to war.
Fuck that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talked about the drone situation a week or two before we went on hiatus, and the point is the same. If we literally had drones from another country spying around, like and being suspicious around, and it wasn't our actual government doing it, our government would take any excuse to gas up the jets. Like, they are going to knock those fuckers out of the sky, just like when they saw a weather balloon and they're like, let's spend $1 billion and some dollars shooting this thing down. You know, they know exactly what's going on because they're the ones doing it, and that's exactly what he just said. They're letting people think we don't know what it is. It's we're being chill about this, guys. We don't know what this is. It's kind of happening to us. Who might want to do something bad to us? Who might?
And weirdly, freaking past and future President Trump, in that really long interview that we never ended up clipping, but that's basically what he said. He's like, I don't know about these drones, but I know that if it was anything bad, we would have freaking dealt with it. Like, I know that somebody knows what it is. And it's like, yes, of course the freaking military has to know what it is. There's no freaking way that they're like, oh, is that from Iran? Yeah, let's just let them keep fucking around.
And that's the thing, that's always been a huge thing. Like I don't remember, we've talked about this before, but a few years ago, 5-6 years ago, I can't remember exactly, but there was this whole big thing where Benjamin Netanyahu called a press conference and CNN was like streaming it live, and he's giving like literally like a presentation, like a high school presentation about how Iran is going to attack everybody and they're everybody's enemy and they've got the yellow cake uranium and they're going to get us and they're bad guys, blah 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 blah, one thing after the next. And we know we as America has always had a fraught relationship with Iran anyway, so it's like the opportunity to go after them with full-throated American hoorahism is exactly what they're trying to manufacture here. And the MIC here, the military industrial complex, also sees how fucking badly things went in Ukraine and how they really only had a very, very small amount of support from America for a very short time before we started really realizing billions and billions of dollars in weapons were getting just poured into this and this conflict, and that it was just some proxy nonsense to launder money. And even they were laundering stuff because they were selling the shit that America was giving them on the black market, and they were getting stopped at airports with bags of money and shit like that. So it's like that
nothing has changed in like 100 years.
Well, that's
always
the thing. Like, they're thinking ahead. Like, this is kind of the Vietnam model. Like, everything since then has followed suit in this way, where they're like, okay, this one didn't work out. We couldn't really manufacture the consent that we were hoping for. We didn't get out of it what we wanted. People didn't go for it. So what's the next place that maybe we can vilify and go for? And that is the whole China using Taiwan as the proxy this time. America didn't give shit about Taiwan. They just produce stuff, but so does everywhere else all the time. They're trying to say that it's a sovereign nation. It isn't. It belongs to China. That's like saying Utah is a sovereign nation. That belongs to the United States.
Even closer, American Samoa, Puerto Rico. We already have a bunch of just territories the Virgin Islands. Mao had a quote where he's talking about, he's like, look, they made Israel for the Middle East and they made Taiwan for us, and they both exist to just create permanent destabilization. Both these things, they've just kind of ended up different ways because, I don't know, there's no Taiwan genocide going on because extremely different conditions in the two areas, where Taiwan is a literal island and then Palestine, Israel was a nation slapped down on top of a bunch of people that already live there. But the
and that's
core
kind
of
of
that is true.
the Uyghur thing. They tried to
They're
use
trying
that
to
a
get
little bit. They tried to be like, you guys, and get these little operatives on that they put out on TikTok and stuff, because they do have their own little guys that they do this with, and they're like, oh my God, fellow kids, did you know that China, and like they'll be doing makeup or something, saying these things, and they're like, we're getting so repressed with our videos right now, and that so it's like they tried it with that was like the soft technique that didn't work. Then it was Taiwan, and that didn't work. Then it was like the Hong Kong protest, and they're like, look, they're crazy, they're going to do that on us, and that didn't work. So now they're like, oh, it's the drones. There's definitely drones. They're coming after us, and they're using these stupid fucking tactics that literally anybody could fact check, and trying to act like this is the big thing. And someone in the chat,
It always looks dumb in retrospect.
Yeah, well, someone in the chat just said like, well, yeah, and they don't tell Trump anything because he'll just say it.
Fucking tell us. Which he doesn't tell us because he's virtuous.
Him for that.
He tells us because he can't freaking figure out when to shut up, and that is good for us, because I want to hear that, like, when he gets up there and says we're in Syria only for the oil, we're only staying for the oil. Don't worry, we left people for the oil. It's like, oh, finally, somebody just fucking says it.
Yes, he always says the quiet part out loud, and we all hate him universally, and even his own people are turning on him because of the whole Shmilan stuff, and that's been a delight to watch.
He is their boy to whip into doing what they want, they being the American people.
Yes.
And if all the Biden fuckers couldn't get him to change at all, if the Trump fuckers can actually get Trump to do a thing, well, you're doing better than the quote good guys.
Yeah.
He can be bullied.
He will. He can be bullied. He has shown that he has been bullied. And if he thinks his approval rating is going down, because like he's also the guy that like, people will be like standing there on the side of the road of his motorcade and he's like, hi, I love you too. Like he's out there like, just he just revels in it. Like all attention is good attention to him. So if he starts to feel like the shift of attention is moving away from him, and that's what we were also talking about, 20 minutes ago or so. If Shmilan takes all this attention away from him, and the internet keeps making fun of Trump with all these AI images of him serving him like a platter of food or on a dog leash or stuff like this, he's not going to take that for very long. He wants to be the alpha in this situation, and he just wanted this idiot's money. And now this, he's like, yeah, go do a Doge thing or whatever the crap you internet people do. I don't care. And it didn't work, because then he got invested in that whole like immigrants.
Yeah, we didn't even get to talking about so many things happened in the last 2 weeks.
Right?
We weren't even going to have that full conversation. Where now we have, oh cool, it's no longer an election year. Bernie Sanders gets to be right about shit again. And now we have Bernie Sanders being like, hey, maybe we should actually hire Americans for these jobs, because the only reason that the things go as they are, it by design, if it wasn't lowering wages and advantaging the companies that were doing it, they wouldn't do it. They don't just say, man, we love foreigners so much, we're just going to altruistically give them all these super high paying jobs. Somebody on ideas I'm stealing from other commies online, like always, it's not the reason American workers are so expensive to employ isn't even necessarily just in the wages. It's our base level of expenses are so fucking high. We all, like, if you're a tech dude and you didn't have a crazy rich family to just pay it off, you probably have 6-digit student loan debt if you're a high-level software engineer. Whereas if you were the exact same high-level software engineer from basically any other country, your student loan debt is going to be far less. So your overall like base rents are just lower, and that makes you cheaper to employ, let alone just the actual hard numbers of the salaries. That's why people can take lower. They don't bring in foreign labor to pay them more. Right. Actually, somebody used the NBA as like an analog to this. It's like, well, look, they bring in foreign talent. And it's like, yeah, but they don't bring in foreign talents to pay them a special low foreigner rate. They get paid the same shit as LeBron. Freaking Hakeem Olajuwon gets money.
Farming it, and to farm the work out to them. These same idiots are like, no, we can't do remote work because we own all this real estate we got to use and micromanage people. And it's like, oh, in the meantime, you're farming shit out to other countries and then telling like Americans they can't work from fucking home. Like, what the hell is this?
Run a call center here, shit.
Right, exactly. And that's 100% true. People here cannot afford to live. And I have been literally like banging the tambourine on this since we started the show about AI is taking your job. It took I'm out of two industries. Two industries I can't find any work in. I've been looking for work for a year and I still haven't. And it is coming for every other industry too, like any kind of call center, any kind of tech support, and where they're telling you, oh, the IT work is basically recession proof. Horseshit, it is. It's going. It's not even there anymore.
Most of your base code is getting written by AI, which it honestly should be, because it's freaking grunt work. Nobody should have to sit there and just type lines of code into a thing.
Yes.
But instead of using that extra money and freed up labor to increase your free time, they just fire you.
Yes. And I have been seeing it post after post, people being like, oh, I just got fired right before Christmas because they said they were switching to an AI model. Or we found out there's somebody I know who was like, had a job for like a really long time. And then they got saddled with training an AI model. And I'm like, well, they're going to lose their job. And I don't know if they realize this. You don't always want to say that to people's face. This is kind of, there's a buffer here. Like you can tune in or tune out. You don't really necessarily want to say this shit to people's faces. Like, well, say your job's gonna go down the toilet. But that's what's happening. It's happening industry to industry to industry. And I don't know what the tipping point is going to be where people are like, hey, hello, we are all, because there's a crisis coming, and there's not going to be any congressional support on this because those companies, the tech companies, are paying them to look the other way and to drag their feet and not do anything about anything.
There's actually a chance where, hey, guess what? The ruling class has fissures and fights within itself. Now there's the possibility. So we had industrial capital that got kind of superseded by finance capital. How superseded? Oh, industry. Well, how do you do anything industrial? You need to be financed. And the bank then can basically direct production because they get to decide which factories even get to be built in the first place. Therefore, finance became the dominant one. Now we have like digital shit that's going on top of that, like what they've been doing they've been able to just farm data for free, and now in this new world that we're entering into, having that data like is a resource, like it is a commodity in and of itself, almost in the same way that oil is. Like you have the raw materials, then what can we process? So now you might actually get like digital capital is now trying to supersede finance capital. Like we're getting to an even higher level of like what the fuck, very advanced imperialist capitalism. And that's the fight. Like you have like the Elon people fighting like the Koch brothers, and it seems like wouldn't they all be on the same side? It's like no, one is finance, one is Koch brothers is actually a bad example because they're closer to the industrial zones. But I don't know, Wall Street and Silicon Valley get to have their rich man supervillain fight.
Absolutely. And it's just getting out of control, and it's going really, really, really fast. That's the thing of it too. Like people just did not see this coming. They thought, oh, it's so funny, the 6-fingered pictures of people like ha ha ha. No, this was the plan all along to inject this because these capitalists, pig dogs, are trying to look for infinite growth. They're trying to get rid of a human workforce because they don't have to pay robots. They don't have to give them maternity leave. They don't have to give them sick days. They don't have to feed them or give them a break of like a mandatory break from working. Like that has always been the goal. But there is no provision anywhere for them to be taxed for doing this, for the environmental damage that they're doing, first of all, or the number of people they're putting out of work. And it's like, okay, well, we'll make legislation that, and I'm sure Bernie will be on this in a minute, but we'll make legislation that says you have to hire X number of people. That is not the answer. If a robot or a computer can do your job, they should be doing it. I'm not talking about the arts. I'm talking about writing code, like menial shit. Because we should be receiving a universal basic income when charging these assholes out the ass for getting to make all this money and become literal trigajillionaires, whatever comes after that. I don't even know, quadrillionaire, whatever, because that's what they're going for, and that's where we're going. There is no cap on earning on these things. They don't break things up anymore. Like mergers are rarely stopped these days. So that's exactly where it's headed. And these 91-year-old fucking Congress people are just going right along for the ride with their, like they're like, okay, just
layer to
make sure the check clears.
Yeah, there was a layer of democracy. You technically approved of this by voting for it.
Right, yeah, and then put the onus right back on the people to say, well,
we'll just vote for someone else. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
And
nobody runs against them, and if they did, it would just be another AOC Junior. So
you could replace every single. they could there could be a freaking Independence Day style, all of Washington explodes and we have to elect all new people. As long as the party apparatus exists, you're going to shockingly find yourself voting for people who vote the exact same way as the people sitting there now.
Yes, yeah, and I really, I think both of us come into this obviously almost as hobbyists because we're angry about it, but
Yeah,
we are not necessarily experts. We're not necessarily political experts or economical experts. We just observe shit and are upset and have cameras, and that's really what brings us here.
And we've seen what
today.
the quote experts say. They all seem to be fucking
Right.
paid off.
But like that makes you ask, like, okay, like what is the solution if you have a fully corrupt government that serves capital? How do you stop that from happening? And it's like, well, you basically can't at this point. And it just, I guess, burns itself out, like literally somehow.
You can't through voting. You definitely
No.
can't through voting. If you wanted to exert pressure external, if you want to try to do it with direction, it would be tactical labor strikes. But even then, not every strike actually strikes at the heart of the issue. I love our Starbucks people, and I hope they all get better working conditions. But like the Starbucks strike is going to have very different effects on the overall system than the rail worker strikes or the port people strikes or the Teamsters when they go on strike. So you can affect it directly in that way, or just through the way our mechanism is functioning. It is unsustainable, and we will have some kind of big old crisis that can lead to that. Like, do we have the revolution like in 1917 where the Russians are living in such insane misery that there really is like nothing? What else are you gonna do, man? Like, are we gonna die or kill the king? Those are our options.
Right. And the labor strikes that he mentions, of course we support labor, of course we support unions. It's on the way to seizing the means of production. But you'd think that Amazon and Starbucks and these big companies would be a little more upset about it. It's because they intend to automate completely, and they don't give a shit about a labor strike right now. They are, maybe months, if not weeks, away from full automation in a lot of ways. So it's like, yeah, strike, go ahead, strike. We'll hire a couple scabs in the meantime, and then we are going to get what we want anyway, and we don't have to hire you.
And the automation itself is actually desirable for the overall way that production is going. It's just, is automation being used to increase accumulation, meaning keep more money and things for yourself, or is it being used to increase freely directed activity or free time? Meaning, are they going to automate your job and make it so you work 1 day a month and get the same amount of money and everything, or are they going to automate your job and fire you? And then it becomes about who runs who has enough power to even make that decision in the first place. Because if it was all the workers making that decision amongst themselves, I bet that's what they would pick. They'd be like, I'd love to come in 2 days a year and receive all the same benefit. Sit at home, got a freaking joystick. All right, what am I moving? All right, boom, got it. Hey.
Yeah, and like the shipping industry is going next. I mean, like they already have the driverless trucks. Like, so they don't really care about these labor strikes, these big companies. Like, they'll just be like, yeah, strike away. And then they're just going to implement their shit. And that's exactly the point. We shouldn't be doing jobs that are so menial in the first place. And everybody should be getting some kind of version of a UBI, which, changes based on need and inflation, and keeps people living so that they can then put their energy into other things, like making shit that robots can't make or something, or making more robot things or whatever.
That's how you get innovation. You let people have some free time and F around. That's how most of our inventions came to be.
And the stupid means testings of UBI programs everywhere all over the world have shown that to be true. If you give people enough money to cover their basic expenses, like all of their utilities and everything like that, and then a little bit extra, then they electively go and maybe get a loan to start a business, or they electively save money and go and invest it into an art of some kind or something that only people can do for other people. They don't just sit around. And even if they did, who cares? Like that, then we start getting into the whole debate about like, oh, well, people just, who cares if they just sit around? I don't care if they just sit around. We are all entitled to this money when they have these companies doing this to people and putting people out of work. So I don't know when the tipping point's going to come, but it's not going to come today on this episode. So do you have a song for us on this on this day?
I honestly, up until you said that, I'm like, oh right, I usually plug in my guitar. I have not even freaking touched my guitar in a few weeks. I have no music.
Well, that's all right. You're not a machine. You are a person. So that's it. That supports our argument that we just had. But we got a little bit over here, so we're kind of out of time. And we if we get the opportunity, we're just going to sit here and continue to rant. And we got to save some hell for next week. So thank you so much for being with us on this very snowy in the east day, and through sitting with us through my bird invasion that I've
You can
been
see all my
suffering.
sunshine.
Right, feeling the sunshine, and I'm over here like watching birds attack my house. So, okay, we will see you guys next week. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves do the best you can. Make sure to reach out to us if you've got stories about things we've been talking about. If you lost your job or something like that, because we will continue to address it. We're going to continue to address it. And then tune in next week to see what fresh hell comes along, and we'll talk about that at the time. So have a good week, everyone, and we will see you next week. So bye-bye.